Being able to run a successful panel discussion not only helps you perform your role as an MC far, far better, it's a great selling point in your publicity material and on your website. Hi, it's Timothy Hyde here from ExpertMC.com and another edition of MC's Secrets, Tips and Techniques. In this episode, we're talking about how to run a successful panel discussion, something that goes on at a lot of conferences and conventions. I'm going to give you 10 quick secrets, things I've learned over 20 years of running panel discussions. So strap yourself in, here we go. Number one, it's not about you. Remember that. You're there to facilitate the discussion, to encourage the interaction between the panelists and the audience. You're there to facilitate that. You're there to keep it on track, and you're there to keep it on time. And speaking of time, make sure your panelists know what time you want to finish the session. This is important. You don't want to get into a session where you need to interrupt a discussion going on or some interesting questions and interesting answers. You need to control that situation. If they are aware of the time you need to finish, then they will help you do that. And also the audience. Say, we've only got 10 minutes left, we've only got 5 minutes left. That will tighten up the questions a little bit and help you keep the whole event running on time. And speaking of time, panels tend to run a lot quicker than you think. You might have 40 minutes or an hour for this panel discussion, but time flies by. Introductions are one thing that use up that time very, very quickly. So I always try and shorten the introductions down as much as possible. And one technique which is actually quite clever is to use a holding slide with the names, a photo, the name of the speaker and their role or their job title up on the holding slide. This can help you just get through that, get into the discussion. Another thing I like to do is always, if possible, get my speakers out from behind the panelist's table, the normal thin table on the stage with the table microphones that they sit behind. If you can get them out into comfy chairs along the stage, or even bar stools is quite fun. I find that works a whole lot better. The interaction between the audience and the panelists is much closer then. There's not a barrier there between them. And speaking of mixing that up, mix up the order sometimes of how you run your panel. Why does everybody have the question and answers at the end? Why don't you do it in the middle, or even start questions from the floor? Just make it a little bit more interesting, because you have to involve your audience. Now, one secret I've learned on encouraging questions from a shy audience is to have some table discussions. So if a point comes up, a question comes up, ask the tables to discuss it for a few minutes, and then get one person from each table. You don't need to go through 20 tables, but maybe 3 or 4 that you can see chatting away, to give us their key points, and then your panelists can respond to those questions or points that come up. That's a really good way to involve a lot of people in the whole discussion. Another thing I always like to do is to get some context about the person asking the question. This helps the panelists respond, and an easy way is just to say, if you're asking a question or you have a comment, can you please tell us your name and where you're from? And this is important, especially for politicians or people like that who sometimes there are hidden depths to some of the questions or comments, and they may understand that better than you do and be able to respond to the question in a better way. Now, this is important. You must be firm when you're running a panel discussion. If things get a bit heated, if it's steering off track and going arguments, breaking out, you've got to be firm and seize control again. Perhaps I think we can agree to disagree, but we must move on. Thank you. And come in with your own question to get the event running back on track. Or there's a valid point, sir, but perhaps outside the context or the scope of this discussion today, and then come in with your own question to get it rolling again. So be firm, but also you should be loose. If the panel is running well, it should run well by itself. You don't in fact, probably need to put in too much input. If the panelists are bouncing between themselves, the audience are firing questions, it can be quite a loose situation. Encourage that if it happens. And lastly, finishing up the panel, I don't like it to finish with one particular panelist maybe having a big spiel or putting their point of view. I like to get a quick comment from each of the panelists. It works a lot better. So when you're coming up to your 5 minutes to go, maybe 4 minutes to go, say, we've only got 4 minutes left, I'd want one quick response from each of you on this point, and bang, bang, bang. So it could be the big challenge for the coming year, it could be an action step that the audience can implement. It's just a much nicer way to finish where all of the panelists have been involved just as you go down the road. So that's it, 10 secrets that you can put into action straight away. If you've got any questions or comments, please leave them down below. We read them all. And if you've got any suggestions about topics you would like me to cover in upcoming episodes, please leave them in the comments section or contact us. Oh, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're trying to put out one of these every 1 or 2 weeks, and you will be notified when we do. And lastly, your action step, pop on to ExpertMC.com and download the free ebooks that are there. And we answer in one of those ebooks the top 10 questions that people ask about how to be an expert MC. And we'll see you there. Thank you very much. My name's Timothy Hyde. Bye.